On the 31st of October 2000, the United Nations Security Council unanimously passed Resolution 1325, formally recognizing the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, the impact of conflict on women, and the significant role women play in conflict prevention, resolution, and post-conflict reconstruction. Since then, 9 further resolutions have been adopted addressing women's active and effective participation and the prevention of conflict-related sexual violence. The Women, Peace and Security Agenda, popularly abbreviated as WPS, is underlined by 4 pillars: participation, protection, prevention, relief and recovery. Today, 32 African countries have adopted national action plans to implement WPS. Welcome to Season 4 of the She Stands for Peace podcast, a series by the United Nations Office to the African Union, supported by the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Regular listeners of the podcast will know that past seasons have been a series of interviews with key actors working to achieve WPS in Africa. In this 4th season, we depart from this format. Instead, each episode unpacks various topics aligned with the 4 pillars of WPS, with insights from guests playing critical roles in achieving the agenda. The season is launched by SRSG Parfait Onyanga Anyanga, and he shares his reflections on Africa's experience in implementing the WPS agenda and the challenges affecting implementation.
Let me start by saying that the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda in Africa has been both promising and challenging. Yet, I believe overall, I strongly think that the arc of history is bending towards significant progress. Indeed, change takes a long time, but it does happen. And it is happening across the African continent.
In episode 2, we ask how the WPS agenda shapes the future through inclusion and participation.
An inclusive process doesn't guarantee an inclusive outcome. That is why we need to guarantee and guard against the inclusion of women and other stakeholders from being a cosmetic kind of present with ticking only the boxes. We have women, we have youth, we have people with disability, tick. We are having inclusive process. But the reality, you have to have a meaningful participation and giving them the chance to be well equipped before you put them there.
10, 20 years ago, we couldn't even speak of youth representation within some of our continental or regional institutions. So, but I think overall, my analysis is it's a step in the right direction. Of course, in terms of proportionality, we're speaking about a continent whose average population is just 18.8 years old. And we have lots and lots of young people on the continent. So I think getting to a point where representation matches the population compositions of Africa's youth, it's a long way to go.
In episode 3, we continue our focus on inclusion and participation, this time unpacking the challenges and opportunities for amplifying women's meaningful participation in early warning systems.
We need to strengthen our collaboration in tracking participation of women participation in peace and conflict prevention activities, as well as sharing this information. And by this, I mean putting in place indicators that would track how women are participating in peace processes.
It will become very, very imperative that to drive the socioeconomic resilience of women will actually be the best pathway to peace. And with this, 3 things need to be done. Early warnings, not only to be able to address the rapid onset, for example, like flooding or drought, but also turning early warnings into early actions, like providing alternatives like climate action solutions.
Bilateral and multilateral partners must respect these principles of mutual responsiveness, where we respond to crisis, we respond to situations on the continent together. And that makes it smart, that makes it inclusive, and that makes it accountable, and that makes it transparent. That is the only way partnerships must be done.
In episode 4, we turn our attention to peace agreements, asking how we should meaningfully promote women's inclusion and participation in peace negotiations and address barriers faced by women and local civil society when negotiating peace. And for this episode, I'm joined by 3 guests, including Dr. Koiti Emily, Hala Al-Karib, and Carol Bodon, who offers a SSR perspective to the discussion. Now, we all understand that fostering intergenerational dialogue and co-leadership on silencing guns in Africa is crucial to promoting good governance, peace, security, and development. And so we dedicated episode 5 to young women peacebuilders. And importantly, we included the often missing perspectives of young women ex-combatants.
Of the time, the first barrier is access to teaching programs. Sometimes it could be subject to mockery and stigmatization.
I'll give you 2 examples with the Office of the Youth Envoy at the African Union and also the Africa Youth Ambassadors for Peace, which the program coordinated and managed. The 2 youth envoys at the African Union level have been women, young women.
There is an evidence gap in our system as well, in our policies, because they do not give enough attention to women's participation in politics.
To finish the season, we turn our attention to the protection pillar, digging deep into the protection of women peacebuilders and women's human rights defenders.
I think there's a poor understanding of women human rights defenders and women who work in this space. It's not been clearly defined as to what our protection needs are and who should provide that protection.
Women human rights defenders experience threats, and those who come from countries that are experiencing political unrest or conflict experience even more threats because of that situation.
As I mentioned in my report that I presented to the General Assembly also, there is also resources and funding put at the disposal of those women, in particular those women-led organizations, in order to be able to implement their work.
The Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund was established by the United Nations to really fund local women's organizations on the forefront of crisis. So the way the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund supports the protection is really embedded into the mechanism when it was designed.
It gives me a great joy to officially launch season 4 of the She Stands for Peace podcast 2024. I urge our listeners to not only listen to the discussions, but also provide us feedback on the areas where you want the message to be strengthened further.
So join us for season 4 of the She Stands for Peace podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen. Until then, stand for peace with Africa's Women, Peace and Security agenda.